Welcome to the Golden Mike podcast, where personal growth simply isn't enough. I'm your host, Mark Cordone, a positive psychology coach, a do-gooder from the island of misfit toys who founded the Joy Revolution. Each week I'll wrap with an extraordinary guest doing extraordinary things through their own revolutionary work to talk about the ups, downs, and all-arounds of life. It's my mission to provoke and empower you through increased joy and inspire you to spark your own revolution to change history for the better. Welcome to the most serious happiness podcast in this multiverse. Welcome to the Golden Mike podcast. Money-wise, you were an entrepreneur at the time.
I wasn't yet. No, not when he was diagnosed.
Okay, so you had to worry about that because he was kind of the breadwinner.
And
right?
He had just graduated from grad school. So we had his grad school loans. He was supposed to take the stage and he was in chemo, or walk the stage, I should say. But yeah, no, I didn't own my own business yet. That was born out of financial necessity. And that's where the drive came from, to build it so big and so fast. Because I was working full time at the hospital. We lost his income and we didn't have shit saved. Like, we were not prepared. We were like 37 starting our lives and not a pot to piss in,
Yeah. And so I'm guessing that you were one of the lucky ones, and you made it happen with the with the business that you started.
Yeah.
Okay. And this was able to pay the bills and the kids and school.
We got a ton. When I talk about like love in action and a community that rallies, we wanted for nothing during this time. Our family and our friends, I mean, they didn't just show up for a week or a month or a year. They went there with us. So between my parents, or my father and his wife, and Jean's parents and my sisters and our great friends and community and all of that, like that plus what I was bringing in kind of kept our heads above water for the first year or two. And then in 2013, I opened my business on like a wish and a prayer, and actually went and got a bad credit loan at like a total skeevy place, like a check cashing place. Because what was I going to do? Say to my family and friends, like, hey, I know everybody's helping us, but I need $1,000 to open a skincare business. What the fuck are you insane? Like, you don't have $1,000. And I was like, holy shit, I have to make this money back immediately. So like, somebody named Polly doesn't come and cut my fingers off, and like, I don't have money to spend, and so it was really a kind of a do or die time.
So you were basically operating as if you couldn't fail.
Yes.
What was the amount of pressure that you were feeling?
I don't even think pressure is the right word. When you're in a survival, it was desperation, or not even desperation. It was because it was a positive feeling as well. It helped me have something outside of cancer. Mm-hmm. So it was relief. It was safety. It brought me great feelings of accomplishment, but it was also like, this is survival. I have mouths to feed. I can't keep expecting, it was killing me that my dad and his family and our friends were helping us so much financially. It was mortifying. I felt so exposed and so much shame around it that I was like, this is a lifetime of spending and bad habits and all that kind of stuff, and you better get it together. Like, this is all on you.
Okay. And what about your relationship with Jean? How was that as he was going through it? I mean, did it something like that could bring, you could put maybe some smaller differences aside, right? When something that salient, something that powerful happens, were you two coming closer together as a result of what was going on?
No, I wish I think I really led everyone to believe that.
Man, I feel like I'm watching the Joker here.
Dude,
there's no light.
No, it was really rough. Like, I think that, okay, did it bring us together? Like, he knew and I knew that he would be okay. Like, I knew that I know the healthcare industry well. I know how to navigate a hospital. I know how to get what we need. He wanted for nothing while he was being treated. Like, I was I knew all the nurses' names. I fed everyone. I knew his blood counts every day. I mean, I consumed
Mhm.
cancer and made sure that he was taken care of and had everything. I mean, we had to look for a bone marrow donor, and there was a lot on the line, and so it brought us closer in the sense that I think he knew he could look at me and know, like, I'm going to be okay because you're driving the ship. Right. So I think it gave him an incredible amount of comfort. I
Yeah.
think he also felt an incredible amount of guilt because I unfortunately put a lot of pressure on him to handle it how I thought he should. Like, tell me everything's going to be fine. Tell me to just be the mom and you're going to get through this. But it was really terrifying and really hard on him. And he kind of went inward. And so I felt like, okay, you go get treatment and I'm going to keep it moving. So I created this dynamic, or this dynamic was created of, like, you just be the sick person. I'm over here. I'm going to start a business. I'm going to keep being mom. I'm going to wear all the hats,
Yeah.
which really created this power dynamic where I held the purse strings, and he was a sick person.
And that wasn't something before that had happened. I mean, it seems like ever since he was courting you, like, he very much enjoyed that or the idea of being able to take care of the family, take care of the kids.
I was always the breadwinner.
Oh.
I was always the breadwinner. He's a teacher. Teachers in California, it's not like they're balling. And he has a master's degree but I was always the go-getter. I was always the hustler. I was always the one that was like, I'll freelance extra. I always had access to bringing in money in creative ways. I think there was always a budding entrepreneur in me. And Gene, it's interesting. His parents have done very well. They're career military. And so for Gene, his whole life, he grew up government issued, government schools, but that allowed his parents to do really well and save their whole life. So, like, Gene he didn't necessarily want for more. And to me, that was a negative thing. Like, I started to label him as this person who didn't have drive. And I know now, in a lot of forgiveness that he and I have done for one another, that wasn't fair of me, because the ADD and the drive in me, I knew exactly who I married. It just got more and more difficult, and it wasn't enough.
Did he have drive? I'm not talking about when you first met him, but when he was in the midst of the second year bone marrow transplant, constant feeling like shit. Did his drive go down?
Yeah, it's really hard to say, but I'm okay with saying it because he and I have talked so much about it. No, he didn't. He kind of went inside, and I felt kind of gave up.
Oh,
yeah. Like, I was doing things like buying audiobooks and making him read Christmas stories and stuff so that the kids could hear his voice after he passed. I would take a lot of video and stuff with them because I wanted them to see that even though daddy was 70 pounds and, like, bald, he pushed you on the swing when you were a baby. Like, I didn't think the cancer was going to get him. I was afraid that the lack of will, or what I interpreted to be the lack of drive to get well, I thought that was going to get him. And years later in therapy, when we were splitting, he was able to, and I was able to, really talk about these two very different experiences we had. He had never said before, all I did was lay in this hospital room for years, and, like, all of a sudden my daughter could walk and talk. Like, he said, like, I just remember staring outside. I remember the smells, like, and I didn't think about any of that stuff because I was outside taking care of our family, right? So I was very much like, right, and you didn't see when, like, my card got declined, when we were buying a Christmas tree. And that I remember one night at like 11 o'clock, I was at Safeway and I had $11 in my bank account. And I was like, shit, like, if I buy milk, then this, because I was just too mortified to say to anybody, like, again, hey, Dad, can I have groceries or something? Like, so we had these very different experiences. But at the time, I was so angry and still angry from old stuff between us that it got pretty hairy for he and I, kind of in that 2-year mark of being sick.
So there was some heavy resentment going on.
Oh God, for both of us. I think for him, I know for him towards me as well. But then what a dynamic is that for him to have to deal with? Like, here you are caring for me, and you're such a bitch, and here I am caring for you, and I am so disappointed in you. It was so fucked up. And at the same time, I love you so much. I
Yeah.
would step in front of a train. There is nothing, if there is something available on this planet that will save your life, you have the right wife because I will get it. So there was that too, and then here's our children. Like my son came home one weekend from my best friend's house. He was potty trained. Like I didn't see Isla's first steps. I wasn't there when my mother-in-law took her to get her ears pierced. Like
Right.
life was happening, but I was working and taking care of him and the kids. That was terrifying for me to be a mother. So I let my sisters and my in-laws, probably if I could go back and do it again, I would have let the hospital and those people do their job. I didn't need to be there micromanaging it. But the thought of being a mother at home and facing being a single mom was so scary. It's almost like I couldn't ever be just alone with the kids.
What made it so terrifying?
I don't know if I can answer that. I think
Because
because I thought I would if I slowed down, I would break down. And I didn't want to break down. We were living in this shitty apartment. We had moved like 3 times. We weren't in that house with the mold anymore. And I can remember going grocery shopping, and then we lived in an apartment that had like a carport, and I had to like lock Isla in the car, but hold Joaquin with the groceries and run from the carport to the door, put him in the house, go back, get her out of the car. And like just things like that would make me like burst into tears because I'm like, oh my God, like I didn't like whose life is this? Right? Like this is insane. And then I think if I wasn't striving towards something, I couldn't have quiet time with the kids. I couldn't. I didn't even know how. And I didn't want it. And that's really hard to say.
Mm. There's this concept that we use in the Joy Revolution by Corey Keyes. I think you've seen it. I think you were in my workshop the other night.
Yeah.
Which striving
Yes.
turns into white knuckling and hustling. And if you don't have things that bring you just happiness, just like the taste of a grape or a hug or sex, like those things that humans do to bring them happiness, you end up asking, there's got to be more to life than what the fuck I'm doing.
Yes.
And it's a great it's a great prescription for burnout to strive like that, right? Did you have any moments where no one was in the house with you and like, I don't know, like you collapsed on the floor, or like moments where you'd sneak into the bathroom and have a couple tears and then just come back out and be like, all right, everything's fine here, guys?
Oh, all the time. I would cry
Okay.
in the shower. I would run the shower water, the sink water. I would, in my other life, God, boy, is my ADD so apparent when I start saying I'm also a dance teacher, but, I have danced my whole life
Yeah.
and I, coach dance teams and stuff for high school. And a lot of times I would start crying teaching dance class because that's when I'm the most at home or the most myself. And so those parts would bring me very emotional. But I really didn't let myself slow down very much because I also had so much guilt around like, God, you're just a piece of crap that like you can't support your family through this. Like, and that would bring up old things from, my 20s and my teens and financial habits and stupid stuff that I had done. And I wasn't 24, I was 37. How do you not have a savings account? Like all these things that I was like, God, I was just getting things together, or what I felt was together. So I was incredibly, brutally hard on myself. And so it was pretty rare that I actually did a lot of that at his bedside.
Yeah.
I used to just sit next to him when he was sleeping.
What would go through your
Yeah.
mind when he was sleeping and you would sit next to him?
Those were some of the most beautiful times we had together. You're not allowed to lay in bed with a person that's in the hospital, but the nurses would let us. So I would curl up next to him.
You can't do that with 2 Catholics. You're gonna end up with the 3rd kid.
Right? I know. And I mean, believe me, none of that was going on. The poor guy was so sick, and I'd like lay next to him and sometimes I don't even think he'd know I was laying there, and I would just smell him. And those are the times when I would let myself get really terrified because I would think things like, oh, I found a journal recently and I read it, and I would write things and say like, what do you wear to a funeral? Am I still going to be Mrs. Borja? Like,
No.
I think I just knew in my mind that this was a real possibility, that it was going to go the other way.
When you let the guard down.
When I would let the guard down. I think the most vulnerable I ever was with myself was never at home or at work or anything. It was 1 o'clock in the morning because I slept at his hospital room a lot.
Mhm.
I didn't, he would also get very anxious, and some of the medications he was on would kind of put him into like almost a panic attack. And so there were lots of nights where he would wake up kind of like almost psychotic and be like terrified. And so that was happening for many months at a time. So I would put the kids to bed and somebody would sleep over. And then I'd go sleep at the hospital because I was afraid that he would wake up. And if I wasn't there, he would like pull his IV out or something, you know?
Right, right. Well, let's
Yeah.
let's flash forward to
Yeah.
2016. I mean, you've been
Let's.
you've been caretaking.
Yeah.
You've been in guilt. You will let your guard down when no one else is looking, and sort of talk about how much you truly love this guy, Gene. It's 2016. Do you remember the day?
I do.
And they when he came through the other side.
Which one what are you asking about? The day he came, like
when he was when he was clear.
Yeah, his last treatment. Absolutely. I remember it. We made signs, the kids and I at this point, Isla and Joaquin are 4 and 6, right?
No.
And, we made Daddy's last chemo treatment signs. And I remember it was like, I think it was their first day of school. And it was amazing. And he had gotten the clearance to go back to work. And he had gotten a job at a local Catholic school, kind of the sister school to the one he was teaching at when he got sick. And, things were falling into place. And mind you, we didn't have a bone marrow transplant. We could not find a donor. And we did bone marrow drives on Guam, right? We did person of color bone marrow drives. I mean, we did Pacific Islander bone marrow drives, and we could not find a donor. And so, I remember our oncologist, I just said to her flat out, how many adult patients with this do you have still living who didn't have a transplant? And she said none.
So it's a miracle.
Oh, I don't know why. It's so amazing that he's still alive, right? So to even continue to go in the direction we went felt so shameful to me. But yeah, I mean, that summer he ran a half marathon. And it was really intense to see him become himself again, but like this kind of stronger version of himself.
Yeah.
But then we didn't fit anymore.
It sounds like post-traumatic growth that he was going through afterwards. I missed what you were saying because I wanted to drop that 25-cent word on everybody. But he what?
I said, but I think then what happened was that it was apparent that we didn't fit anymore. He came back to insert himself into the family, and I was kind of like, oh, bro, we got it. Like we're on a plan. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was going to ask if that caretaking role that you were used to being in for 4 years was something that you were ready to let go of.
No, it was my whole identity. I didn't even know how to let go of it. I didn't even know what that's what strives me. That's what motivates me. What crisis is going to keep my business going now? Like,
yeah,
what's my story? Like where I don't even know. It had been, and it was a packed 4 years. It was 2 kids. It was finances. It was building a business. It was all this stuff. And then it was kind of like, oh, hi. Okay, you're back. But I don't really know what that means. And now there's not this thing anymore. So what do we do now?
It almost sounds like a culture shock that you two were going through in terms of roles. And also at the same time, like, what does the new normal look like?
Right.
Because it sounds like you had an idea of what normal was. And he had an idea of what normal was, maybe returning back to the way it was before. And you were like, I'm never going back there. And
he came back really strong, which I hadn't seen a lot of that outward strength while he was sick. So he came back like, I'm running a marathon and half marathon and here I go. And I was exhausted. I just fell apart. Like I was so tired. I was tapped out. My reserve tank was like, I was on fumes for sure.
How resentful were you?
Beyond, there isn't a number or a chart. The resentment was absolutely all consuming.
Because even the way that you're talking about it, like you're exhausted and he's running a marathon.
Mm-hmm.
You were the damn caretaker the whole time. Mm-hmm. Even when it seemed like he wanted to give up, you were almost willing the whole family to stay together.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So where does this lead to now? Because you already called him your ex. So you let the cat out of the bag in the first a minute. So when I coach you on podcasting, we'll talk about the storytelling.
Save some for the show.
Yeah, Joe Fern, right? Don't cut that out, Joe Fern. Uh,
Yeah, right.
so, yeah, what led to the divorce? How about that?
Okay.
Because
Yeah.
it's not a secret that
Mm-mm.
you two split up. And how fast was that, or how slow was that, in terms of that,
Um,
from coming home from the hospital, running a marathon, and then being separated?
it was pretty fast. We had like that summer of him, like running the half, and we were just fighting a ton, and really in ways that, like, at one point we looked at each other and we were like, we are better than this. Like our fighting got pretty bad. And at one point, here's Isla's 4, and she's like, guys, stop, and it's
Oh,
just, I mean, it was so terrifying. We could start to see the kids arguing, and so, like, we had no filter anymore. We would just go for it. There was so much pain and sadness and grief and fear, and I think we could see this thing falling apart in front of us. And
no
and
therapy or counseling?
yes, oh, are you kidding? We read books together. We saw 3 different therapists. We cried at night and sat up and said, like, we will figure this out. Like, you're alive for, I mean, imagine that. Like, here you are alive for a reason. And what, we're going to get divorced now? Like, I couldn't even stomach the thought of it, the shame of it, how I felt like I was giving, the higher power like a big middle finger, like, hey, thanks. Now I'm going to go do my thing.
Yeah.
Because what was painful for me on the other side is that while our physical relationship deteriorated while he was sick, as it should, I started to have those feelings again, like I did when I was 13, like really questioning my identity, my sexuality. And so he was done with chemo in September.
Mhm.
And he came home one night in November, and we had just come off of a huge argument, probably about nothing. And I remember, like, the house was quiet. I don't know where the kids were. They were not here. I had a fire in the fireplace, and I just was sitting on the floor. And he got home, and he was just kind of like, what's up? And I just said, come sit down. And the look in his face, like, I mean, the guy is not Caucasian, and he turned white, I mean, like, it was like you could see it. And it's like that terrifying feeling where I know exactly what that feeling feels like when you all of a sudden know something. It's how I felt when I was 13. It's like when you know something that you don't want to know.
The bottom's about to drop out.
Oh, fuck. Yeah. So he sat down and I just looked at him and, like, I just said, I think you and I both know that it's over, that it's done. And he just put his hands in his head, and we both cried. And he just looked up and he was like, what do we do? And that just began. And then I said, oh, P.S., there's more. And I said, honey, I have to be really honest with this about you. And he knows that this had come up for me in my life at different times. So
You told him about the 13-year-old.
yes. And I told him about this brief, like, time that I almost went out with this girl and then, like, chickened out and stuff like that. And it was never really an issue. And I said to him, and it's still hard for me to say, even in this podcast, it's hard to say because I don't necessarily know if it's, the box I check, which isn't important. And that's a whole other thing. But I said to him, I have to tell you this. I also think I'm gay. And he just, I just remember the look on his face, and he put his head, he's kind of always done that thing where he puts his head in his hands. And, just through tears, he looked at me and he was like, okay. Like, I need a minute. And then he said this beautiful thing that I'll never forget, so now we're both really, crying, and he's sitting on the floor with me. And he said, you showed up for me for these 4 years, and I'm telling you, I will show up for you. And that's all I ever wanted to hear from him, was that he was going to show up. And I'm telling you, since the day we split, it has not been easy, and hard things have happened, but he has showed the fuck up in a way that I didn't even know he was capable of. He has never said to me, did you know when we were married? Did you lie? I'm embarrassed. How could you? We have had arguments about other things about our marriage, but my identity and my being a lesbian, he has never, not even one time, said something shitty about it. Never.
Amazing.
Never.
It's funny because you can analyze this and be like, oh, this is a case study for codependence, love, resentment. And then this whole time you're also possibly out of alignment because of just your where you fall on the orientation scale, right? Um,
Right.
uh, what I mean, well, actually, the question that I want to ask is, after you spoke that truth,
Yeah.
what happened dynamic between you and him then?
It was very up and down. I think we were numb.
Still wasn't solved yet. Yeah.
No. And I think we still wanted to try. So we still went to therapy after that. We tried to process a lot of what happened. We really didn't take it lightly. We were terrified about what it would do to kids. The both of us, could never imagine. I mean, we talked about things like, let's just have an in-house separation. Like the thought of not putting our children to bed together every night was probably the loudest piece for us. Like,
Yeah.
and so we kind of went into recovery mode and went like, all right, we got to go deep to see, is there anything that we haven't done? Is there anything that we haven't tried that will tell us that staying together makes more sense than splitting? And so we went on a journey of doing that for a couple months, and it just became really clear. It just became really clear that I think at the time, if the Emily I was in 2016 and early 2017, I would have said we wouldn't have stayed together anyway. Our marriage was already falling apart. My my new understanding of my true identity wasn't the only reason why we split. But now, 3 years later, I can say it doesn't mean I'm taking responsibility for everything that happened in our marriage, because I'm not. We both, I guess we're at fault. We both did the dance. We both could have done things differently. But I now know that every relationship I've had, especially my marriage, because I didn't have a true understanding of that, like intimate connection that you have if you're either straight or gay. I didn't have that because that was in the middle. So I could never find out why. I always thought that like my issues around sex had to do with the trauma I experienced as a kid. So that was a very easy thing for me to blame it on. I always thought like, well, God, I was really promiscuous, and like I certainly had no shortage of boyfriends and men and that kind of thing. But I now see that like it was all to validate this thing I probably knew. And so, and now I lost, what was I just saying? I'm sorry. Yeah. So I would say now it is the reason why we're not together, because I truly believe that if I hadn't discovered this about myself, I know the good person he is in his core, and I know who I am. And I think that we would have figured it out. Mm-hmm. I think we would have figured it out. Or I at least think we would have been those parents who said, we wouldn't have stayed together with it being ugly, but we would have found some way to be harmonious and remain a family, and ease our children through it. I wish I had gone a little bit slower, but I already knew,
What do you mean you wish you would have gone a little bit slower?
I can be very extreme. And so once I told him, I was like, okay, I was very practical about it. Like, here's what we're going to do. We're going to find you a place to live, and you're going to be really close by, and everything's going to be fine. And we're going to be in harmony. We're going to do everything together. And okay, I rented a place without telling him. Like, I just went into go mode. I went into what I always do.
You were in
I mean, can you imagine? I was in triage mode. Like, can you imagine this guy? I'm like, oh, here's where you're going to live. And on the one hand, I'm like, well, why didn't he say like, I didn't sign that fucking lease? No. And on the other hand, he was like, you showed up for me. Okay, I'll live here. Like he doesn't live there anymore, but I was really dictating. I controlled every piece of it.
Do you think that was, and I maybe I'll get to talk to Gene one day, hopefully, but from your conversations with him, that sort of that sort of attitude of, you were there for me. Was that more of like an obligation? Was it a gratitude? Was it like, a tit for tat? Like, you did this for me, and I do this for you. Like, what?
No, it was really genuine. It was really, I think it was fear. I think that, and he will admit too, there was a lot of fear that, oh my God, I'm not going to have her to take care of me. Right. So I think he was terrified to be with
her. Wow.
Yeah. And not in like, this weak kind of way, in this way where it was like, almost like he has said before, like everything's okay when you're on it, like.
So he was conditioned, many people around you, that you were going to be the problem solver.
And I provided the safety that I didn't have as a kid.
Wow.
That is my mission. I'm that person for so many of my friends. I was that person for him. I like that role.
Yeah.
And so I think there was that. And I think it made so much sense to him. We've talked about it a little bit, not recently, but, over the past 3 years, that I think me, I guess for clarity's sake, me being gay answers some questions for him.
Okay.
I think, and we have never really dove too much into that, but I think it did because he didn't have a lot of questions for me about it.
Hey, it's Mark. I hope you're digging the Golden Mike podcast. If you have or are just starting your own revolution fueled by joy, there's a site I created for you. If you, like me, believe that personal growth is simply not enough, if you, like me, are committed to changing history for the better in both micro and macro ways, check out joyrevolution.com. In there, you'll find an archive of our over 200 Golden Mike Live Facebook shows, and of course, our podcast that you're currently listening to. Check out the blogs highlighting how positive psychology and joy theory apply to your everyday life. There's even some cool clips from our Joy Revolution course geared towards influencers, speakers, writers, and change agents. It's all there. Go to joyrevolution.com. That's joyrevolution.com. Let's get back to the episode. Or what did you declaring it, I'm gay, what did that do for your own sense of self, the own sense of identity, confidence, lack of confidence, terror, freedom? Like what did that declaration do for you?
Well, I was very safe with the declaration, just like I was when I was 13. I said, I think. So I didn't make the declaration. But I knew I was in love with someone.
You were?
Yes. And that person didn't know. But I really realized it, like it hit me like a ton of bricks. And so I was trying to process that.
Don't tell me it's one of the nurses.
No. That's a whole other podcast. But yeah, so I didn't declare it. I was looking for signs. I think I knew.
So were you weren't dating? Were you?
No.
So it was a friend that you had fallen in love with?
It was someone I grew up with, and my younger sister is one of her best friends. But we didn't see each other very often. Yeah. And our parents were very good friends, and but there's an age difference. So
were you attracted to her when you were younger?
No, I didn't. I don't even remember her. She'll have all these memories of me, like, oh my God, I remember when we were on vacation. And I was like, I didn't even know you were, like, sometimes I don't remember because I was 15 and she was like 9 or 10, like she was a little girl. And I would see her at family events and stuff like that. We always had a really fun chemistry and this banter back and forth. And she's been out for a really long time. Okay. So that was just like when she came out to her mom's first phone call was to my mom.
Wow.
Because you want to talk about a Catholic family. I mean, her family's published in the Catholics of San Francisco. Like, they're no joke. Yeah. So, yeah. So I didn't declare. So what did it do for me? He gave me, I wouldn't say permission, because I have never, fortunately or unfortunately, I have never really asked him for permission. And I think that is such a disservice that I did to him in our relationship. I just mandated things. Yeah. And then when he started to push back, I didn't like that. But it gave me the permission to, once I said it out loud and told him, it gave me the permission to go and figure it out, and so then and then when I really knew, I went right into more therapy, and it was the darkest. 2017 was the most terrifying, dark year of my life. I have never contemplated suicide before. And I want to be careful with this, because I didn't want to kill myself. I wasn't going to do that, but I did have very dark thoughts about how I was in so much pain that it would be better if I was dead.
Ideations, those are different.
Yes. Yeah, I've never ever seen that kind of darkness before. He would have to come home the school he taught at across the street from our house, the house where I still live, where he was living at the time. He hadn't moved out yet. And I was just a mess for the entire year. Like what I was doing to my children, what I
Sure.
was doing to him. How could we have gone through this? And here's where I am. Why is this happening to me? Why do I know this about me? I don't want to know it about me.
If you could, would you have ungated away?
Like if I had the choice to take a pill and I wouldn't be gay anymore.
I'm not talking about it now. I'm talking about it when you were in
At
your
that point,
yeah.
I think if you're talking about the first couple weeks after I said it, yes. If you're talking about after she and I started our relationship, and again, here's that joy and pain. It was the most home and amazing and in my body I had ever felt in my life. And also causing the most pain I or anyone around me had ever felt. To do that to my children, to say those words to them.
So it was still the same core feelings that were almost
Yes.
discharged: shame and guilt. Shame
Yes.
and guilt.
And how dare, I would think to myself, like, what in the world? Like, who does that? And it's almost like I had to go figure it out, because what if it's not true? And then I walk away from this and I got to be, I got to tell him where I'm at. And, I would really waver back and forth that entire year, which did incredible damage to my partner and to him and to me. And it's just a really terrifying thing to identify one way your whole life and then all of a sudden not be that family of four that we had designed,
Absolutely.
that I wanted, that I loved. I
that
loved our family.
it started when you were a kid, and that's the public facing family that sort of that I think of Leave It to Beaver style, right? Like, that public facing family, and
Yes.
you had it for a second.
And here we were, this indestructible couple who overcame cancer.
Right.
He builds a six-figure business out of nothing, and they have these two beautiful kids, and he's a neighborhood teacher, and everybody knows him, and the community's rallied, and here they are. And oh, P.S., did you hear? His wife's gay, and she left him.
Did you feel selfish?
Yes.
Yeah.
I still wrestle with that. Yes.
Really?
And we are better parents. We are better friends. We are kinder and more loving to each other than we have ever been today, in separate houses 3 blocks away from each other. We co-parent in a way that I am really proud of, and we work our asses off at it. And still, I wrestle with the guilt and the shame, and I think still some residual sadness. But knowing that in my bones, this is right for all of us.
Yeah.
And he would say the same thing too, like, this is the right path for us. I don't know why, but we will always be parents. We will always love our children. We will always be okay.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
we're really committed to that.
Absolutely. So how was that? Or if you, I know you said it's even part of being on this podcast saying that I'm gay,
Yeah.
how out are you in the community? Because I know that you're like dance mom, PTA mom. You're
Totally.
all over the damn place. Like everybody in the community knows you. You work at a hospital. Are you known as Gay Emily? Like is that something that is a lot of people know about?
I would say yes. So now in this
it's out.
kind of third year of my journey, right, 2019, I really came to a place where I felt like I was doing a lot of hiding still, and using a lot of my kind of hetero privilege, my wife privilege, and my children go to Catholic school.
Yep.
Right. And so I was terrified about that community. I was, there's one other lesbian couple there. And so I sat down with the principal and just said, like, here's the deal. And how does that fit in this community? And at what point does the curriculum start talking about, what's right and what's wrong and that kind of thing? Because I got those messages, at that point. So
how did the conversation go?
It was great. She was like, listen, she's phenomenal. She's a new principal there. She's been there like 2 years, but she's like, we are an inclusive community, and we love your children, and we love you. Actually, their dad teaches there again, so he teaches at their school now. She was like, and we love him, and you're a part of this community, and we support you. And that's the way I have been so terrified about being out at school. And I'll tell you, God, do we have the best community. If anybody said anything, they've said it behind my back, and which is fine. It's none of my business anyway. But like, we have been met with such gentle beauty and support. And I think people have really respected the way Gene and I have treat each other and the way that we coexist together at events, and the way we parent, and the way nobody had to choose a side and nobody did anything wrong. That like, people at school are like, oh, okay. Like my partners come to things at school, and he is with someone as well, and we're all figuring it out, and they have been along for the ride, just like they were with everything else. So I create these stories in my head. Like, maybe I was the most interesting thing that happened for like a month there, but then I'm sure they're off gossiping about somebody else or whatever. But we have a really,
the Catholic PTA.
I know.
The Catholic PTA is quite the beast.
Yeah, totally. And like, they're like, yeah, great, you're gay. Okay, great. What we're going to fight about is like whether or not we're going to change the name of the father-daughter dance. Like it just it hasn't been that big of a deal. And a lot of people have come to me or written me really beautiful notes about like,
amazing,
good for you, blah, blah, blah.
Were you worried about kids bullying your kids?
Yes. And I still worry about that, because right now kids don't really understand it, or I don't think they put two and two together, because a lot of times they still see he and I on the schoolyard together or at a school play together or that kind of thing. But kids are starting to find out now, because Joaquin and Isla will tell them, or they will say, oh, I'm going to my daddy's house. And they're like, what? Because most of the time we have play dates and stuff, it's at my house.
Yeah.
And so kids are starting to learn like, oh, your mom and dad aren't together. And when I told Isla and Joaquin about me, it was really beautiful. My kids let their guard down the most when we're in the car and we're listening to music and we're doing our thing. And so I kind of lowered the music and told them, and I started to cry, and I pulled over, and they both, my son is like,
Were they like, we know, Mom?
No, not at all. They were like, it's okay, Mommy. Like, we love you no matter what, and you can, but they've always grown up with you. They have aunts who are lesbians and uncles who are, married, and they've kind of always grown up in that environment, but they kind of didn't miss a beat. And here's the thing. They know my partner. She was at Joaquin's baptism. Like, they've known her. So that was more of an interesting dynamic to go from auntie to mommy's girlfriend.
Sure.
So, we had many more conversations about that, but we didn't tell them that for quite a while.
The Catholic community keeps coming up, and the Catholic community, there's this idea of spirituality. The story's not even done yet, folks. But there's this idea of spirituality. How would you say spirituality, or the lack thereof, came into play during all of this?
In a funny way, I think it strengthened it.
Your Catholicism.
Not necessarily my Catholicism. I think there are some things that make me feel very, not Catholicism. I've never really identified with. I think being Catholic, being the second of four girls from an Irish Catholic family, has always been a very safe label for me. So it's normalized me in a way. It's helped me go into a group where it's like, I feel comfortable and I understand that world. I think that over the years, I have started to explore my spirituality and my relationship with a God. But it doesn't have a lot to do with being Catholic. I find comfort sitting in a Catholic church. Now being gay, I don't feel like I don't belong there.
Do you and your partner is hella Catholic, or comes from a hella Catholic family?
Comes from a hella Catholic family.
So like, you go to together.
Yeah. What's that?
Go to church together? No.
We don't. I don't go to mass anymore. No. Okay. And I haven't for a long time. Don't get me started on the corruption of the Catholic Church. Like, I don't want to be in an environment where my daughter can't lead the mass one day. I've always had those kinds of feelings: the judgment, the patriarch, and then just the just all of it. So we don't go to church. If my kids go to church, they go with their dad, and I go with them on holidays, or if they're like performing at a school event or something, I'll go. But I don't go to mass regularly on the weekends, and neither does she. No.
Okay. So what about you two as a couple? What does spirituality look like? Do you have practices, or do you have beliefs that you've co-created together, or that have helped you with things greater than yourself? Or
that's interesting. I think that's something that I'd like to have with her.
Yeah.
We are very different. I am much more, let's read a book, let's do a workshop, and she is much more internal. And so we definitely run in the same moral code. We have the same values and ethics, but we haven't necessarily talked about spirituality in that way. We both believe in God and we both pray, but we don't do that together. And I've never really had a co-spiritual practice with any partner I've had.
It's been really you and your journey, or whatever the family had dictated.
I mean, most of being Catholic felt punitive to me. We had to go to mass on the weekends. We had to go into a scary dark room and tell some priest about the bad things we did. We had to kneel. There wasn't a lot of positive experience around it, except like donuts in the rec hall after, and the amazing friendships I made and stuff. So everything that I've taken from my Catholic practice has been really beautiful, but I probably could have gotten it in another community too.
Sure, absolutely. It does feel, I agree with you. It does feel punitive at times. And then at times it feels like, oh, this is what they meant by that.
Yes.
It's coming out as this, and it's coming out as sort of this idea that, you need to put in the hardship now, and then you're going to get your reward in heaven.
Yes. Which
is very different from what what I think of when it comes to positive psychology. I think of do the hard work and get the rewards as you're doing the hard work. And by rewards, I'm like, doing what you love in and of itself is the reward, right? This could be a very fresh button. You told me this right before we went on the podcast. But just because you find the person of your dreams doesn't mean that it's not shits and giggles 24/7 and rainbows and skittles. I know you two are going through a rough patch right now.
Yes.
And so is this the first time you guys have been going through a rough patch?
No, there have been some significant periods. We kind of keep coming back to the same rough patch.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is it therapy? How do you work through that?
I don't know. I think it's really glaring that it's never, ever, ever been an issue of, that she is the absolute person I was made to love, for sure. I will never.
Really?
Oh, for sure.
Even though the way that you guys came together was very much a Hollywood type story, you know, friends, and your sister's friends since kids, you finally, you finally come to this place, and still, there's a lot of work to be done in this relationship, or in any relationship, right?
So much. Yeah. But it's 100% clear to me that she was that, I can't even really articulate how I feel about her and how what I get back from her. And I'm really confident about saying how she feels about me too. That's never been an issue for us. It was a very intense falling in love experience, because I think that we had both been in love with each other for a long, long, long time and just didn't really get it. And she would never go. I mean, I'll say to her, didn't you ever think? And she was like, what? No, it wasn't even in my realm of thinking. I mean, she was madly in love with someone else and was going to get married, and they were looking at having children, adopting or in vitro and all that kind of stuff. So she's like, no, you're like Liz's older sister. I always had that older sister crush, but I never went down the rabbit hole about it. But, I think what's very difficult for her, for Jean's girlfriend as well, is that Jean and I are not and do not want the kind of divorces that we saw in the movies or heard about. We want to be blended as fuck. And I don't want to design a life without him.
Someone's been watching a lot of Modern Family.
And we want to do what, we sat down with our children and the therapist, and we took our rings off in front of the kids, and we have talked to them, and we have been really inclusive. And I think for her, this is her first go around, right? And so she wants the whole wedding and all of that, as do I.
Mhm.
but she also in her, she's in legal, right? And so she's very black and white. I'm very much like, let's roll with it, like let's, and she's very much like, listen, at 5:02 you said X, Y, and Z. And so this fluidity around designing what my relationship with him looks like and our family and where she fits, there's been a lot of pain for her as well, because she wants a life with me that doesn't always include someone else.
Sure.
And so we really struggle with, and there were times in the beginning where I broke it off with her to try to go back because this was too scary and too hard.
Sure.
And those were very hard on her. And so she certainly, though it was her choice, endured a lot. Falling in love with someone and breaking it off and ending a marriage, I certainly don't ever recommend. And do I think it was the smartest way? No. But have I learned that my path has always been the path that has brought me to the next thing?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't spend a lot of time explaining it or justifying it. I just won't,
Yeah.
and I think that's why it doesn't come up with most people, because I don't give room for it.
Yeah.
And it's taken its toll. I think a little bit like when Jean was done with chemo and was like, I'm here and ready. I was like, that's fucking nice. Like, I can't even see straight. I think she's a little bit like right now. I'm like, all right, let's do this. And she's kind of like, oh man, like, really? Now you're all ready to go. Like, I think our visions for what this blending thing looks like are not in the same place right now. And that's hard.
Gotcha. So there's work involved again.
A
Work
lot.
involved.
Yeah.
Um, Obviously this the Golden Mike podcast is one of the big things that I talk about in it is this idea of joy. And I love the fact that you're so open about your story, because I'm not about these stories of just like, oh, it's been happy my whole life and these are my 5 tips for everybody, right? Go on to Instagram and find those platitudes. But like, this is a very real life thing. And so when I talk about you and joy nowadays, before even the embodiment of it, like, what are the first things that you think about when it's just like, are you feeling joy still? Are you more joyful compared to those, the different epochs in your life, or has it been pretty straightforward with you?
I think there's been a large gap in joy for me.
Okay.
There was a lot of joy during this period of time while my mom was still alive
Mhm.
and I had just gotten married. And then I think the joy, I think I felt a lot of things over the last several years, extreme gratitude and those kind, but I don't necessarily think joy was a part of it. I can say that in 2019, I started to experience joy again, joy in my children, joy in being a mother, exactly because of you, exactly our relation. I think, yes, our relationship started me even think. I've never thought about the concept of joy.
Mm,
And really what brings me joy, from everything from my career to my relationship to just me alone sitting by myself.
mm,
And so, yes, I can say that this year there have been real times of joy that have been centered in my relationship, that
mm.
have been centered in my co-parenting relationship,
Yeah.
and that have certainly involved my children. And I'm such a better mom now. I would never, the first thing I say when someone says, tell me about yourself, I think when I first became a mom, it would have been the third or fourth thing I said. And now it's the first.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And then I think one of the interesting things has been, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, as I'm looking at you, moving into adolescence, it looked like not only being rebellious and stuff like that, but you're trying to find happiness in different ways, right? We didn't talk about it too much, but there was a period where you were wilding out, right? Um,
Oh, no doubt. Yeah.
and that's a different type of, that's sort of pleasure happiness, right? And then there was sort of this joy that you took in, I wouldn't say joy, but there was sort of this role that you took in striving, and but underneath all of that striving is a strong sense of purpose, which is of another form of happiness. But when you do one just with purpose and striving without the the pleasure happiness, you're not complete. And when you're doing the pleasure happiness, I'm sure that when you were doing the pleasure happiness, you were like, that was fun, but either I have to do it again, or I have to find a purpose in my life. I have to find something. And it seems now it's beginning to merge in these roles where you're finding happiness from your kids and from being a mom, all these things happening. I tried this with another guest. His name was George, and he fucked the thing up. So I want to try it with you, Emily.
Oh man. Okay.
I want to see what joy embodied looks or what joy embodied is to you. So I'd love for you to complete these questions or these sentences. Joy looks like
fireplace and a really great blanket on my couch with my kids.
Amazing. Joy feels like
a warm hug, specifically the hug my mom used to give.
Joy sounds like
the belly laugh of both of my kids, but particularly my son, because he's such a little old man that his laughter is infectious, and it's right, and you just don't always hear. So his belly laugh.
Joy tastes like
the best mint chip ice cream on a really hot day with my kids.
What are we talking about here? Ben and Jerry's? Or are we talking about 30?
I know. I wish I had sophisticated taste. I'm talking about Baskin Robbins.
B&R.
I'm telling you,
does have the best.
Like I have paid DoorDash like $40 to bring me a sundae at night, maybe. Like absolutely shameful.
And well worth it, right? Well worth it. Joy smells like
my mom's cheap Gina Tay body wash. My sisters and I all have scarves and things that smell like her, and her friends have given us little things of her body wash, which she wore her whole life. And there are times where I just open up this box that she left me, and I like hermetically sealed it all in a little bag, and I'll just inhale it. And there's no Prozac that could compete with that.
There's no Prozac that can compete with that.
No way. That's joy.
Yeah, and that's one of the things is joy gets stored in our bodies, and sometimes we need to reactivate it by thinking about how it looks, how it tastes, and then the memories come back forward. The other part is this idea of social change, right? Wanting to take action in the community. I know that you're a huge community activist, but also at the same time, I'm curious what your revolution is.
Yeah, I get curious about that sometimes too, but I'm getting closer. And my revolution is the turning point. My revolution is that it's okay to change course. My revolution is whatever that thing is behind you, that monster on your back, be it your identity, your marriage, your finances, that thing that it's the moment when you stop and turn around and face it. And so I want women specifically to know that you can change course. You can take the road that feels terrifying. And if you're truthful and you do things in, love and authenticity and as close to without ego as you can, you'll come out on the other side.
Amazing. Before we wrap up, what are you being called to say at this point?
Say that again. What?
What are you being called to say at this point? What else are you being called to say?
I don't know how to answer that. I think I'm being called to say, you mean like in general for the masses to hear?
No, this isn't the Golden Mic Live. It's just more, it's more so, is there anything else on your mind that you wanted to?
Oh, I love it. Okay. Sorry. I think I want to say that, you know what? Because I think I'm continuing to work on my ability to let things stay messy and to not justify or explain away. When people would first find out that he and I had split, I would launch off into this monologue of like, we're really good friends and he lives 3 blocks away and it's really awesome and the kids and blah, blah, blah. And now, no, I think you and I just had a really beautiful conversation that I'm grateful for. And there are certainly things already in my head that I'm like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have said that or blah, blah, blah. No, I was called to say exactly what we just talked about. And that I will never stop saying how grateful I am for every single person, both my inner people, both my inner circle and those community members and our school community and the people at work and our families and just everybody, because I got to tell you, that transition, I think, has been painful and really beautiful. And we have not done it without love.
Amazing. Emily, thank you for coming on the show. I told you it was going to be a deep dive.
Are you kidding me? Thank you. That just flew by. Thank you for having me.
Oh, anytime. I'd love for you to come back and talk more about this. All Emily's bios and contact information are in the show notes. Emily, I think in closing, I just wanted to say I appreciate you. I see you. I love you. And thank you for coming on the show. To everyone listening, thank you for tuning into this one. It's not always shits and giggles when it comes to joy, people. So for your sake, for my sake, for our sake, for fuck's sake, lead your revolution. Remember, rebel in love, in light, in shadow, in joy. It's your boy Mark. See you soon. Take care. I hope you enjoyed the Golden Mike podcast. There's more good stuff coming your way. But until the next episode, let's stay in touch, yes? Find us on Instagram as The Joy Rev, or communicate with like-minded revolutionaries in our Facebook group. Search The Joy Revolution Underground. And of course, don't forget to check out the classes, articles, blogs, and some serious fun at joyrevolution.com. That's joyrevolution.com. Now, until then, what will you do to change history for the better? Let's go out and play, shall we? Press start to begin.